Just a quick note before I start this video, I can't really talk about what I enjoyed about the Blackcoat's daughter without spoiling it, so if you have any interest in seeing this film, then please watch it and then revisit this video later. So let me start this video essay by talking about its title. I don't mean that this film is beautiful in a light or happy way. The Blackcoat's Daughter is one of the darkest films I've ever seen. But I guess by beauty, I mean that it's beautifully tragic. By the time the credits rolled, I was left feeling sad and empathetic for the main character of the film, Kat, which is shocking that I felt any sort of compassion for a psychopathic, violent, previously possessed, brutal killer, yet somehow I did. I pretty rarely talk about horror movies on this channel, especially films involving possession, because most horror films I find entertaining but rarely end up loving or wanting to revisit them. But The Blackcoat's Daughter is an exception. I want to talk about the impression that it had on me. The film's focus is on three girls, Joan, Kat, and Rose, whose storylines jump back and forth in time. The film's first act focuses on Kat and Rose's storyline, who are two girls that are left behind at their boarding school over winter break. Both of these girls' lives are about to change when 1. Kat becomes possessed by a giant demonic bunny rabbit, and 2. Rose has to encounter and look after a girl who was possessed by a giant demonic bunny rabbit. Sounds like a pretty unique but still traditional horror film so far, right? But as the story unfolds and we learn more about these characters, that begins to change. We don't really understand Joan's connection to the film throughout most of her storyline's development. All we know is that she's scared, alone, and needs help getting on her feet. Most of the film carries this narrative of switching back and forth between these two storylines without us really understanding their connection. Not only that, but Kat and Rose's storyline kind of jumps around in time throughout a couple points, so we're left feeling even more confused as to what's happening chronologically. Fortunately, by the end of the film, everything comes full circle and we're able to get a clear understanding of everything that's happened. I personally am not a fan of movies that are confusing just for the sake of being confusing and making their viewers feel stupid, but that's really not this movie. I feel like by the end, the film gives enough context for you to put all the narrative pieces together. There are quite a few takeaways from this film to hash out in regards to the plot, but I want to touch on 3 of them. Number 1, Joan and Kat are the same person. I've heard the complaint that Emma Roberts and Kieran Shipka don't look anything alike, and so it's misleading and confusing to the viewer that these two are supposed to be the same person. And I'm not gonna lie, I actually completely disagree with this. At the beginning of the film, I actually said out loud that they looked alike. Number 2, Kat is a very lonely and sad person. Loneliness and isolation are 2 critical themes of this film, and we'll revisit that in a little bit. Number 3, Kat used and relied on the demon of this film as a means to cure her loneliness. And yeah, you heard that right, she actually enjoyed being possessed, and again, we'll jump into that later. These 3 aspects of the film are why I enjoyed it as much as I did, because it was really unique. And let's start with number 1. I like number 1 because I was definitely not fully expecting Joan and Kat to be the same person at all. And yeah, like I said, I really did think that they looked alike, but I thought that maybe they were sisters or cousins or something who were both somehow connected by this demon. But as we understand these characters better and their individual storylines, it actually couldn't make any more sense that they're the same person. Once we find out that Kat stole her new identity from some random woman named Joan, it becomes glaringly obvious that she's Kat. It makes perfect sense that they're the same person based on Joan's social awkwardness and agenda. It helps us understand Joan's purpose in the story. I thought that was kind of a really awesome twist. Number 2 was my favorite part of this film. We understand very early on that Kat is lonely. Her parents died in a car crash, so it's no surprise that nobody's coming to pick her up at school during winter break. Kat actually likes the fact that she's being possessed because she kind of thinks of the demon as a friend, which is kind of twisted. As a human being, no, she doesn't like being a cold-blooded murderer, but if it makes the devil happy, then it makes Kat happy in this film. Again, pretty twisted. The demon eventually leaves Kat after an exorcism is performed on her in a hospital, and this makes Kat surprisingly sad. She literally stares at the devil and asks it not to leave. And yeah, I actually felt really sad in this scene. She looked at this demon as her only friend, and she didn't want to see it go. And I felt for this lonely character. With that, I also want to point out that the devil left Kat's body pretty easily. It's important to note that this isn't the type of demon that we're used to seeing on screen. In most horror films, exorcisms either don't work or the devil makes a huge scene before finally leaving the victim's body. But not in this case. The demon left easily because it wasn't really that powerful. As another example, earlier in the film, Kat is forced to say a prayer before eating a meal, and she vomits because the demon just couldn't handle the prayer. At least that's how I interpreted it. And I kind of like this. If anything, it made the film a little bit scarier because this devil was a lot more grounded. It wasn't like some otherworldly force that couldn't be stopped. It was pretty weak. And I feel that's the reason why it never returned to Kat after the exorcism. It just wasn't powerful enough and was scared to come back to school or Kat.
Don't go.
Now, point number 3. Kat used and relied on the devil to cure her loneliness. In point number 2, I touched on the fact that Kat befriended this demon and asked it not to leave. This was unsettling, because going back to traditional horror films, most humans don't like being possessed for obvious reasons, but that's not Kat. Kat was so lonely that she didn't want her demon to leave. Not only does she ask it to stay, but 9 years later she tries to get it back. She kills Rose's parents by stabbing them to death. She beheads them and brings them to the furnace as a sacrifice, similar to the sacrifice performed earlier in the film when she was still possessed. However, it doesn't work. The devil never returned to the school after it left her body 9 years ago. Despite Kat's efforts, her murders were completely pointless, and this actually breaks Kat. That's how this film ends. She just breaks down and cries. Again, that's incredibly twisted, but also so sad, that a human can be lonely enough to the point where she wants to be possessed. And not because she's purely evil, which is even crazier. Kat isn't a natural murderer, she isn't inherently evil. She actually struggles to kill Rose's parents. She puked in the process because she was so disgusted by what she was doing. Being evil wasn't her motivation to want to befriend a demonic force. Loneliness was. This film is very unique and captivating in my opinion. And if you haven't checked it out, I would definitely recommend it.